Recording is on.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to LisaBug Yoga for Healthy Hips and Hearts. This is our last installment of this type of class for the month of March. So we've been working on hip openers, hip flexors, opening up through the glutes, a little bit through the hamstrings and the inner thighs, the abductors and adductors. We also have been working on expanding through the heart with good posture, opening up tight chest muscles and shoulders. So we had a special request to go back and visit those hip flexors today, which we will, and also special requests for the neck. So I'll focus on neck muscles and neck release as well. So I want to show you something I'm going to be doing with my small chair. And I want to do this before class starts so you can look at this and say, sure, that'd be something worth trying, or maybe not. And then I'll also be showing options for this particular movement if you don't have a chair and some other things that you can use. But we're going to use our chair as an assister to open up tight hip flexors. And you don't have to do this now. You can just take a look and watch what I'm going to do and then adjust your chair accordingly. So we all know that movement, high crescent lunge, where we're up on the ball of the back foot and we're opening up through the front of the hip. We're going to use our chair to accentuate that. And the way we'll get into that today is by coming down with your fingertips on the floor and stepping your leg back onto your chair. And I want you to notice that I'm getting most of my leg on the chair, not just the lower leg, not just my knee, but I'm trying to get my thigh up on the chair. Now I feel a pretty good stretch here for that hip flexor, but if I come up and lift the heart, I can use my wall for balance, or I can really focus on good balance today. This is a wonderful stretch through the hip flexor. So I just wanted to show you that before we get started. As we get to that point of the class, if that's not for you, I'm going to show you some other options for that as well. So before we begin, come on down onto your mat on your back. Make sure you have space on your mat from side to side once you lay down. And in fact, I might have to adjust mine just a smidge because I want to be able to do a nice chest expansion laying on your back. Now you might need to have a little blanket or a towel or a pillow to help support you in certain areas depending on how you feel with this particular exercise. So just come down onto your back. And we're going to start to gently open up the hip flexors just a little bit through very slow meditative movement. With your knees bent, separate your feet about as wide as your mat is. So I'm just feeling where the edges of my mat are with my toes. And then make sure your knees are also separated that same distance apart. And then just start to windshield wiper the legs. So you'll drop both knees at the same time over to the right side. Notice your left hip lifts a little bit off the floor. Tighten your glute muscle on that left side to feel the hip flexor release. And then lower it down, pull those knees back over to the other side. So you're just thinking about in your vehicle how your windshield wipers go from side to side. And we're doing that with our knees. And then I just want you to do this back and forth at your own pace. And start to tune in with your breathing as we are here. So you can take a nice big inhale as you move your knees, and then exhale into that stretch, or vice versa is fine as well. Your arms are just relaxed gently by your side, or you can bring them into goalpost arms here, with your elbows a little lower than your shoulders. And both of those shoulder blades really firmly in the mat. And you'll notice that this is also a gentle twist through your lower lumbar spine, a little bit in the mid-back as well, too. And then we're starting to diagnose how we're feeling today in these particular areas. We're feeling tight in the hip flexors, or if this feels pretty relaxed and easy, or if you're feeling any pain anywhere in the joints. And if so, then being mindful of range of motion. Let's take one more to each side, dropping those knees over to the right. And then dropping the knees over to the left. Then come back to the right to hold. So both knees are moving to the right, the left hip is lifted. We're just going to stay here and relax and breathe. If you want a little bit more of a stretch here for this left hip flexor, you can take your right foot and just bring it up and set it on the outside of your left thigh, and then just let it give yourself a little bit of weight. Now, if for some reason that bothers your knee or your hip, if it's not right for you, don't worry about that piece. And just allow the breath to move in and out through the nose. And you can slightly contract your left gluteal muscle too. So if you tighten that just a little bit, this left hip flexor will relax and release. We'll take one more breath here in our hold. And if you have that right ankle on the top of the left thigh, remove it, set it back where it was on the mat. Pull the knees up through the midline, and then drop them both over to the left side. So again, your feet are as wide as your mat, and your knees are as well. This right hip is going to lift up off the floor. And if you'd like to take the left foot, you can brace it over the right thigh to give yourself a little bit of a weighted stretch. Now, when I do that on the right side, my right knee says, nope, I don't like that. So I'm going to go ahead and take the foot back off and just relax without that extra pressure. But we can add the glute squeeze. So tighten that right glute muscle, just give it a gentle squeeze and release that right hip flexor. And we'll come back to the breath. Inhale deeply through the nose. And exhale slowly and fully. Staying here 2 more breaths. And then we'll bring those knees back up to the midline. And then bring your feet close together and roll over to your right side. So you're just going to lay all the way onto that side on your mat. And here's where it's kind of nice maybe to have a little bit of something tucked underneath your head, just so you feel a nice relaxed position here. So your hips are going to be bent about 90 degrees, your knees bent as well, about 90 degrees. You can also place a little cushion between your knees if you like for this particular movement. And then stack your hands, palms of your hands together with your arms outstretched from your shoulders. And then this top hand, you're going to draw a rainbow above your head. So try to keep your fingers on the floor as you draw that rainbow. And as you come around, open up and drop your left shoulder to the floor. It might not touch, that's okay. And your knees might separate a little bit. And then try to draw that rainbow back over your head until your fingertips meet. Now, if you're really tight through your shoulders, you might not be able to keep your fingers on the floor all the way around. And it's okay if they're floating up off the floor a little bit. But I want to make sure you're not straining your shoulder here and just moving this nice and gently. Now you can decide whether you want to bend that floating arm a lot too. So that might help you protect your shoulder if you really bend it and bring it around. Or you can try keeping it really nice and straight and reaching as far as you can above the head. I think that's about 4 or 5. Let's do 2 more. Reach and open. You might feel a little freer each time you go. And come back around. And this last one we will hold. So trace the rainbow up and open to your maximum comfortable position and hold here. Now, if we did this in a restorative class, I would have this floating hand supported by a big pillow. If we don't have that in a regular yoga class, that arm might hang there in space. If that's uncomfortable for you, you can place this hand right onto your rib cage and just let your shoulder drop back so that your arm isn't feeling strained. And we'll take 2 more breaths in this twist to really open up through the rib cage. And 1 more. Then trace that rainbow back over the head to come back to that sideline position. And then see if you can reach your ankle, that top ankle, with your hands. So I'm going to pull my knee way forward so I can get the ankle. If you can't reach it, then that's where your yoga strap comes in really handy. You can take that strap, bring it around your ankle so that you've got a lot of room to hold on to it. And then try to draw your knee back to where it was, which is above the other knee. But then we're going to pull it back as far as we can. And you can pull that heel to your glute. We're going to do a nice stretch for the top quadricep and hip flexor. And again, we can squeeze that glute just a little bit. And as soon as I squeeze it, I can tell my knee draws back a little bit and that hip flexor relaxes. And we'll hold just a couple more breaths here. Keep drawing that knee back and breathing. Last inhale deeply. And exhale. And we'll release the ankle or remove your yoga strap. And then you can either roll to the other side so you're facing the other direction, or if you're looking at the screen, you can press yourself up and still face that same way. We'll go to the other side. I'll give you some time to get yourself situated. Move my chair here a little bit. Make sure you've got space over your head so you can make that nice rainbow position. All right, so we're laying on the opposite side, nice and comfortable. Palms are stacked, knees and hips about 90 degrees. You can put your little cushion here between your knees. And then we're just going to try to draw that same rainbow above the head, reaching that top arm and then rolling open into a twist. Ooh. And then back. So now my right arm is the one that's on top, and that's a little tighter, I can tell when I open up. So just take your time. If you find a spot here and you go, ooh, that's a little spot I want to linger on and hold, you don't have to open up all the way before you stop. You can pay a little attention to that tight area. And again, if the knees separate just a little bit, that's absolutely fine. So as you open this up, your knee might come with you on that top leg, but that's okay. I want you to find the range of motion that works for you, both in the twist as well as in that chest expansion. And let's get 3 more on this side. You can bend the elbow any amount. And 2 more, maybe looking for a deeper edge. It's interesting for me as I'm kind of analyzing this, I'm tighter in my right shoulder, but I can actually twist open a lot further with my spine on this side. So I'm actually feeling like I'm getting more range of motion. All right, the next one we will hold. again, if that arm's floating in space, it's okay, but I'd prefer you have a little something under there to support. We definitely would in a restorative class. And let's just relax here. 3 more slow breaths. Remember, if you're feeling too much strain in that shoulder, take your hand, put it right there on your rib cage, and just let your elbow drop to the floor. And that's going to take a lot of pressure out of that shoulder joint. Last breath in. Then trace your rainbow back around to finish. And then we are going to attempt to reach this top hand to our ankle. If you don't have the range of motion to grab that here, take your yoga strap, wrap it around the ankle, and then we will pull that knee back to in alignment with the opposite knee on the floor, and from there even further back behind to our maximum stretch here to open up the hip flexor and the quadricep. And then we find a little gentle contraction in the top glute, so give it a squeeze. Keep drawing that knee back. And your hips are stacked on the floor, so there's no twist here. We're not rolling back at all. Shoulders are stacked as well. And just a couple more breaths here. And then we'll release the ankle, restack those knees, and then press yourself up to a nice comfortable seat. Ankles crossed or legs extended out, maybe sitting up on a cushion, and really lengthen the spine. So now that we've done some opening here for the chest, we're just going to come into some breathing with a gentle chest expansion. So bring the palms of the hands together right at heart center. And as you inhale, we'll open into those goalpost arms and pull the elbows back behind you as far as you can. Squeeze your shoulder blades. And then close the palms together. And then open. You're contracting the muscles of the upper back to give you room to expand the chest. And now we're going to add movement of the neck with this. So the next time you open, look as far as you can to the right, but don't twist the rest of your spine. And then as you close the palms, look back to the front. And we open looking as far as you can to the left. And close. And let's apply the breath, inhaling as you open and look. Exhaling as you come back to the midline. One more each side. See where you can go with that neck rotation. And relax. Palms of the hands come down to the knees. We'll take the right arm, open it out, lift it up, and then drape it all the way over the top of the head till your fingertips are close to your ear. And I don't want you to pull forcefully, but I just want you to use the weight of your hand and tip your head toward the right side. And then bring it back up. And then again, tip it. Now, if your hand being there is too much today, then what I want you to do is put that hand on the opposite shoulder That's not your elbow, that's your shoulder. And as you tip it, I want you to push down with this hand. So you're creating length by pressing the shoulder away rather than weighting your head. We'll do a couple more. Now let's hold this last one. So your head is tipped to the right. Your hand is either at your shoulder or gently across your ear. And then turn your chin to look down at the floor and just hold that. So we are in a side bend of the neck with a gentle rotation. We'll just stay here 2 more breaths. Not too intense. Last breath. Then we'll come out of the rotation first by looking forward and bring the head back to neutral. Relax that hand to your knee. Reach the left arm up, stretch. And we can drape that hand over to gently touch the ear. Now this also requires a good range of motion here, but it's okay if your elbow is down a little bit. And tip your head to the side. And back to neutral. And you should just feel a little bit of gentle weight from your fingertips and hand. I'm not actually pulling. And your option is to bring this hand to the opposite shoulder and press down as you side bend the neck. Honestly, I really like both of these. Maybe we should do a few of each. I get a different sensation and they both feel really beneficial. Let's do 2 more. And then decide where you want to hold it, either with the hand up or on the shoulder. And very slowly turn your chin to look down toward the floor, and that's the angle we'll hold. About 15-20 seconds. Oh man, I'm feeling that these are something we should do every day. Last breath in. Exhale. The head comes to look forward and tip it back up. Excellent. Now let's just drop the chin straight down to the chest and lengthen the back of the neck. And then bring it back up. And typically I don't do too many of these because we already look down enough through our day as it is if we're on our phones in front of us. But just to come back to a nice lengthened position in the back of the neck. Just 1 more. And bring it back up to neutral. All right, at the beginning of the class, I showed you a demonstration. And we're going to use our chair to open up the hip flexor. So I'm going to give you also an option to use a little bit of a blanket or your yoga blocks for this same stretch. So have that equipment close to you so you can decide what's going to be best for you and what you want to use. And when I'm using a chair, if I have a slippery floor, I like to anchor it to my yoga mat so it's not going to go anywhere. So have your blanket blocks close next to you. I'm going to put them behind. And then your chair is going to be behind your body. And you want the back of the chair not to be behind it so that you can extend your leg through. So just for now, come to a standing position. We'll take a nice breath in, sweep the arms out and up. Soften your knees and exhale, swan dive into a forward bend. Then inhale, we'll sweep back up. Exhale to lower the hands down. We'll do that twice more, just flowing forward folds. Inhale. Bend the knees slightly. Exhale, fold down. Inhale. And exhale. One more time. Breathe in. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up. Exhale, release. So let's step the right foot a little bit forward and the left foot back and plant your heel, warrior one. And I'm going to really square the hips and then reach both arms up. So for those of you that have toe issues and you're not going to use the chair, this is your pose today to open up this hip flexor. You might not be feeling much of a stretch. So your next option, you can bring the palms at your heart to relax your shoulders a little bit and step that back foot a little bit farther. Lift up onto the ball of the foot if that feels okay for your toes. Really tuck this pelvis under and reach the arms up. Now I'm starting to feel that stretch a little bit more. So this is another option to hold. And then our final option, using our chair, if you'd like to give it a try, we'll reach the hands down to the mat and then take your time to slide that leg back onto the chair. So I need to kind of lengthen myself back a little bit. So if you're using your chair, I want you to get most of your leg on that chair. You can stay here with your fingertips on the floor if you'd like. You can use your blocks to hold yourself up a little bit. Or you can find your balance, rise up and place your hands onto your thigh, or use the wall if you have that close by. Come all the way up to balance, or lift those arms up. So lots of options here for you to decide the one you want to hang out in for a little bit. Palms can be at your heart center. Staying here a few more breaths. If you get yourself to the chair and it's not working for you, then just slide that foot back off the chair and go back up to your two other options, warrior one or high crescent lunge. Last breath in. And then we'll all take our time to get back to a stand. So if you have that foot on the chair, bring your hands down, gently slide the leg off. It's a little easier to get there than it is to come out of it for me. Come back to your forward fold. Inhale, sweep up. And exhale, lower. So let's take all those three options on the other leg, because you might be able to do one side on the chair, but not on the other side. So we'll step that left foot back, or right foot. Yep, I think I cued my correct foot, and plant that heel down. Warrior one, square your hips and reach. Now, if you're doing warrior one and that's the pose for you, but you're not feeling enough of a stretch, you can add a little side bend into this too. That's a nice option to feel a little bit more range of motion. Or let's try the high crescent lunge. So step that foot back a little bit further. Come to the ball of the foot. Squeeze the glute, tuck the tailbone under, and maybe lift. And each one of these progressively challenges our balance a little bit more as well. Or if you want to come with me to the chair, lower your hands down, walk yourself back until you have that leg onto the chair. You can grab your block, hold yourself up here, or bring the hands to the thigh, rise up. What a great hip flexor opener. Maybe we reach the arms. Now, since this is pretty intense and deep, I want to make sure you don't feel any pressure in your lower back if you're doing this one. Glue in those abdominals. Squeeze the back gluteal. And let's hang out here about 3 more breaths. All right, take your time to come back to forward fold together from whichever pose you chose to do. And then we'll inhale, sweep all the way up. And exhale the hands down. Okay, we're going to bring our stretch into a kneeling position, Anjaneyasana or low lunge. Chances are you might need your blocks and perhaps a cushion for your knee, or I'm also going to show you a way to use the cushion that was similar to what we did with the chair. So let's come back into that forward fold. We'll inhale, sweep the arms up. Exhale, swan dive into forward bend. And then lower yourself down. If you're using a cushion, you're going to place both knees right onto either your mat or to your blanket. And then we'll come on up. Now, before we do our low lunge, we're going to come into camel pose. So from the knees, take your fists and place them on either side of your sacrum, right on your SI joint there. Knees are about hips distance apart. Give your glutes a little squeeze and slightly press your hips forward. Pull your shoulder blades together, open up your heart, and then slightly lean back into a baby back bend. Now, this doesn't have to be big, but we're getting a hip flexor stretch, a hip opener, as well as a heart opener here in camel. Now you can also tuck your toes under if you like that little stretch for the bottom of the feet. So you can come up here, give your toes a little tuck. If that feels okay for you. And we'll hold here 2 more breaths. Now gently pull yourself back up. If your toes are tucked, you can flip them back over. And then we'll counter stretch into cat. So bring your fingertips down to the mat or your knuckles, and then curl your tailbone under, look toward your belly, and round your back to the ceiling. So we have an opposing stretch here. Two more breaths in cat. Really scoop the belly. And then we'll come back up to the knees. And we'll take a step forward with the right foot onto the mat. Now, it feels more comfortable for us usually to stack the knees and the hips in a 90-degree position. But what I want you to do is even step further forward with that foot so it's way out there in front of you. And then take your entire hips and shift them down and forward. So this blanket that I have is elevating my knee. Sometimes the knees are really tender to do in this particular pose. So a nice option is to actually, once you get into your lunge, to bring your knee on the other side of your blanket. So my kneecap isn't actually touching anything. My shin is on the blanket. My kneecap is free of any pressure, and it's extended over the top of that blanket. So from here, we can lift the arms up to get a little more stretch. You can have your hands on your front thigh, palms at heart center, or you can actually reach down to the mat if that feels more comfortable, or to your blocks. Now we're also getting a pretty generous hip opener through the right glute. So we'll hold that stretch, just a couple more breaths. And then bringing your fingertips down on either side of that front foot. Keep the left hand down on the floor or your block and open and twist. And I want you to draw that arm back, back, back. Or we can wrap the arm behind the back to that little hammerlock position to give ourselves a heart opener here, a chest and shoulder stretch, while we're releasing that left hip flexor, the hip flexor on the back leg. And one more breath. Breathe it in. And exhale it out. And then lower that hand down. And take your time to shift back onto both knees. So whatever way works best for you to get there as we go back into our camel. So coming up to the knees. Now we were really opening the left hip flexor. So I'm going to continue to open that hip flexor a little bit as we twist our camel pose. So let's reach both hands up and take your right hand and bring it down either to your sacral area, or you can reach it back toward your heel and start to turn to the right. So we're twisting in our camel pose. You can tuck your toes under here as well. If you tuck them under, you might be actually able to reach your heel. And then I want you to squeeze your glutes, but you're mostly focusing on the left side, getting that left hip flexor to release. 2 more breaths. Last breath, and I'm looking down over my right shoulder. And then inhale, come back to center. Exhale, bring the hands down to the mat. We'll take our counter pose, which is cat stretch today. So tuck the tailbone under, curve your back up. You're pulling your chin gently toward your chest to elongate the back of the neck, to release tension in the lumbar spine, to open up the shoulder blades. All right, release that cat stretch and bring yourself back up to your knees. All right, we need to repeat that sequence on the other side. So you're going to take a step forward with your left foot, bring it to the mat. And then if you're just here at 90 degrees, I want you to step it even further forward. I'll pull my blanket back there a little bit. So a big step forward with that front foot, dropping the hips down and forward as we come to our kneeling low lunge. And again, if your kneecap is really sensitive, which it is for a lot of us on our sticky mat, I've placed my blanket underneath my shin, so my kneecap is off the blanket and it's nice and free. There's no pressure there. You can reach the arms up, stretch, or hands at heart center, or to the thigh, or even down to the floor if this feels better. Once you find a place that works for you, come back to the breath. And last full inhalation. And exhale. Then we'll bring our fingertips down to the mat. The right hand stays on the mat or maybe to a block. And we open up into our twist to the left. So I want you to use the muscles here of the upper back to draw this top shoulder open. So you're activating those muscles. You can also wrap this hand behind into that hammerlock position. I'm turning my gaze up, but you don't have to. You can keep your head relaxed, or you can even look down toward the floor. One more breath, inhale. Exhale. And lower that hand back down. Take your time to come back to your knees one final time for our last camel pose. So it's our camel with the twist. Toes can be tucked under if you like that position. We'll reach both arms up to start. And then taking your left hand, you're going to bring it to that hip here, or reach it back to the heel and stretch the right arm up. And we're not turning our hips, so I'm not angling my hip bones. I still want my hips forward. I'm turning my spine, and then concentrate on squeezing your glutes, especially that right side, so we can open up the right hip flexor. And on the other side, I looked down towards over that right shoulder, so I'll do the same on this side. But you can turn and look up or have more of a neutral head position. 2 more breaths. And activate your core to pull yourself back up to the center line. Untuck the toes and bring your hands back down to the floor for our final cat stretch. Tuck the tailbone under in the spine. That lower back really is going to be happy to elongate again after camel pose. Scoop the belly in. Last breath. And exhale back to neutral. So we'll leave the hips stacked just above the knees and walk your hands forward as far as you can away from you. And then start to drop your head down toward the floor, and see if you can get your forehead to come down to the mat. So for some of us, that's going to be no way. That's not going to happen. So your forehead can be floating off the floor, or you can place your block underneath your forehead. Now, some of you might say, well, yeah, I can get my forehead down, and I don't feel much of a stretch at all. So if you need more, you can use your blocks, if you have 2, place them under your hands, and this is going to elevate your arms up a little further, so that when you bring your forehead down, you're getting even more of a stretch here. This is Anahatasana, puppy pose. And there's another way that you might see this taught, but I don't prefer it too much because it's too much of a neck stretch. But some people actually will bring their chest down to the floor and their chin, and their gaze is forward. But again, that's not super great on the neck. So I'd rather have the forehead to the floor, more of a neutral neck position. Let's take 2 more breaths here. And this can be just extended child's pose if you like that better. Last breath in. And exhale it out. All right, let's take a break from that for just a moment with another little back bend. Bring your hands out in front of you. Drop your hips down and come beyond kneeling plank to a kneeling up dog. So I'm really lifting and extending through my heart, opening both hip flexors, lengthening. Shoulder blades are down. Nice long spine. If this is too much of a back bend, just pull it up a little bit and just come to a kneeling plank. And 1 more breath. And as you exhale, pull those hips back up. And back to an extended child's pose. Now you can stay in extended child's pose, especially if you have any wrist problems, Or I'd like to bring this up into downward facing dog. Now that we've really opened up through those shoulders, can tuck the toes underneath, lift the hips. And when we did Anahatasana, there was a really openness, a big openness through those shoulders. So I want you to push away from your hands and try to find that here in this position. If it's too much strain on the wrists, come back down to the knees and do the same thing, Anahatasana or extended child's pose. I'm going to give you maybe about 30 seconds to stay here. If you're up and down dog, you could maybe pedal out your feet a little bit by bending one knee, pressing the heel to the mat, and then the other. Or you can work on softening the knees and tipping your tailbone up to the ceiling to really elongate. If your hamstrings are super tight, you can bend your knees here any amount that you need to in down dog. The interesting thing for me, when I bend my knees deeply, the stretch goes more into my Achilles tendons, the lower portion of my calf. So it's still a great way to do the pose. And let's take one more breath here. You need to have a good sticky mat for this pose or you slide. One more breath. And then let's drop those knees to the floor if you're in down dog. And coming to child's pose, let's bring the hands now next to the sides of the body and your palms are up. Let your shoulders completely relax and melt forward toward the floor. My knee arthritis doesn't allow that, so my bum is always up a little higher, but whatever you can do today, just be in a comfortable place. And let's take 2 more breaths here. And then rising back up. We'll come back to a comfortable seat. And again, you can use your mat for that as well, or your blanket to come and sit on. How we doing? Feeling the effects of those stretches for sure. Hopefully the hip flexors are feeling good, the lower back. So I'm going to bring some work back into the neck with a few more twists. So in a comfortable seat, simple cross-leg pose, we're going to do a spiral twist. And this means we turn our spine one direction while we turn our head the other. So we'll take a nice inhale, reach the right arm up. As you exhale, turn your body to the left and bring that right hand across your knee. The left hand goes behind you, and then turn your entire spine as far as you comfortably can to that left side. Once you find that range of motion that works for you, start to turn your head back to the opposite direction to the right. So I'm using this hand on my knee and the hand behind me not to crank the twist around, but to support it so that I can keep my twist moving to the left while I'm turning my head to the right. Now, when we breathe in a twist, as we inhale, we think about sitting taller and increasing the length of the spine. As we exhale, we focus and think about twisting perhaps a tiny bit further. And we'll take 2 more breaths here. And 1 more, breathe in. Breathe out. Then look back again over your left, just briefly, and bring your entire spine back to the midline. Close your eyes for a moment and just notice. You might move your head around, move your neck around a little bit, making making sure there's no tension there. And then we'll lift the left arm, reach up. This helps us to lengthen our spine. Reach across as you twist. See if you can anchor that hand there. Right hand goes behind you. Turn your entire spine as far as you can to the right. You're looking over the right shoulder. Then once you have your full range of motion here, start to turn your head the opposing way. So we have opposite stretches and opposite forces in our spines. We're turning from the tailbone up to the neck, the base of the neck to the right, and then we're turning the neck itself to the left. Breathe in to lengthen the spine. Breathe out to rotate a little further. 2 more breaths. Now stay in that twist, but turn your head the opposite direction just for a moment. This kind of frees up any tension in your neck. And bring everything back to the midline. And relax. Shoulder blades are down. So our last hip opener today is going to be a half cow face. If you're feeling uncomfortable sitting on the floor with one leg stretched out, jump up and sit on your chair. And we can do that same movement up off the floor. So what we're going to do is take the right leg and extend it to the front. And if you're in the chair, you're going to do the same thing. You're sitting more toward the edge of the chair. And then take your left foot, pick it up, and see if you can fold the crease of your knee where it's bending right over the left thigh. You might say, nah, that's not going to be very good for me today. So I always love to have a second choice, which is sometimes an even better choice. So if this half cow face position is not working for you, you're going to bring the sole of the foot to the inner thigh and let this knee open. Or you're going to take a seated pigeon by bringing the ankle right on top of the thigh to open this knee out. In the chair, seated pigeon is wonderful, but what we want to do is fold over this position. So whether or not you're in cow face or in pigeon or in tree, find the one that works best for you, and then we'll extend the spine forward. Just a few breaths. You can use your yoga strap to reach out toward that opposite leg. And just notice where you're feeling the stretch depending on the one that you've taken. They're all great hip openers, but they also involve a little bit of a hamstring stretch to some degree, especially if you're sitting on the floor. If you're on YouTube later after this live class, you can pause this if you want to hold a little longer. You can even do all 3 of those positions and hold them for a little bit of time. And then let's begin to move into the other side. So let's come on up, extend out the bent knee. And let's do a little preview and try the 3 poses with the left leg. So the first option is going to be cow face, where we stack where our knee bends over the opposite leg. And this foot is slightly tucked under us. Option 1. Another option is pigeon, where we bring the ankle across and we let this knee open out. And our last option is to bring the inner thigh or foot to the inner thigh for tree. Pick the one you like and extend forward. Or press pause and try all 3 for a little bit of time to hold those 3 different hip openers. Now, if if you're not in a chair and the hamstring's really bothering you on this with the leg extended out, it's really nice to maybe tuck a block underneath your leg, but this bends your knee up a little bit so it frees the hamstring. It's a great way to do this pose with tight hamstrings. And I don't have the block right under my knee because that's a little uncomfortable. I have it more under the upper leg a little bit. So again, the back of my knee is free, but my knee is able to bend. A towel, a hand towel also works excellent for that. Let's take 2 more breaths here. Nice and deep, relaxing breaths. And then rising up. And release any props that you have. Unfold that leg. And we'll just sit in quiet meditation for a couple of minutes. You can be in your chair. You can be on the floor. You can even lay onto your back for just a few. Let's close our eyes and just come inside, fully in the present moment. Fully embracing the space that we're in today. Sometimes we come to the end of a class or a practice and we can be a little bit hard on ourselves and say, wow, well, gosh, I couldn't do that today. Or I couldn't do that one today, or I used to be able to do that one. So I'd like you to rid yourself of any negative thoughts. And turn it around to the positive. I did that today. I tried that today. That felt wonderful today. And just bring those thoughts to the forefront of your mind, the positive aspects of your practice. And realizing that it's never a competition. It's not a competition between other people, what they can do versus what you can do. It's not a competition with your teacher, your instructor, and it's not a competition for yourself either, what you may have done in the past or what you think you should be able to do. So really embrace that today, where you are today and in this moment, because it is perfect and you are perfect. Let's take a breath together. Inhale, sweep the arms up. Exhale the hands to the heart as we linger for a moment to express our honor and gratitude for continuing on our journey, making this a priority, building a healthy spirit, mind, and body. And the light and joy that resides within me honors the light and joy in each of you. Namaste. Thank you so much, everyone. If you need to jump off, I love you a lot. Thank you for supporting LisaBug programming. It really does mean the world to me. We've done this together. It's been just amazing. If you can stay on for a minute or two, I'd love to chat and see your beautiful faces. And I'll see you April 12th. Thanks, everybody.